Hey, we are live on another Friday night for the hashtag TQIF lineup. We're going to start things off with a live Tex-Trek podcast talking about the latest episode of Star Trek Lower Decks, and then later on the Starfleet Boy After Dark channel, you can catch the Starfleet Boy After Dark show.
Yeah. Or yeehaw.
Yeehaw. Well, we have some people watching, so y'all want to
Nice.
go ahead and get started?
Sure, let's do it.
I'm Fathery,
I'm Starfleet Boy.
I'm Brian.
and this is Tex-Trek.
Engage.
Welcome back aboard the Starship Texas for the 158th installment of the Tex-Trek podcast, the home of Star Trek fandom from deep in the heart of Texas, where we have deep talks about Star Trek. And tonight we are talking about Star Trek Lower Decks, Season 2, Episode 8, I, Excretus, written by Ann Kim and directed by Kim Arndt. So the two Kims in collaboration on this one. But yeah, I'm joined by the delightful Starfleet boy, aka Boimtoberfest Miami.
This is There's a thing here that happens called Oktoberfest Miami. It's pretty awesome. It's not as big as the biggest Oktoberfest in the United States in Texas, but it's pretty good. And so, in honor of this episode, which felt like a Boimtoberfest to me, uh, I'm calling myself Boimtoberfest Miami.
And we also have Brian, the Truckspert, also here in Austin, joining us.
Yes.
But yeah, we're just...
Apparently,
Well, go ahead.
I was about to say, apparently not the computer expert, because wow, did I have a lot of problems getting ready for for this show.
You
That's all
needed
right.
Rutherford.
You're here now.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're just going to each give kind of an opening statement, discuss our kind of broad takeaway on this episode, and then after that, we'll go into the episode breakdown and talk about it in great detail. But I'm just going to quickly recap the episode by reading the official synopsis, and then I'll kind of expand on that with spoilers. The synopsis reads: a consultant arrives on the USS Cerritos to run drills that require the lower deckers and bridge crew to swap duties. So basically we get this jerk who is not only making them run these drills, but also rigging the system so that they score low. And we have kind of the entire ship all faced with this one dilemma, and they're having to go through these cool simulations on the holodeck, or actually holopods. So we get to see all kinds of neat different Star Trek scenarios. But at the end of the day, they outsmart their drill instructor and pass the tests. So we'll just each kind of say our broad thoughts on this episode. Starfleet Boy, why don't you kick us off? What was your kind of general takeaway on this one?
I think for this one, it's a different. It hits differently for me because it's probably one of the most zaniest and craziest and wildest episodes of Star Trek, just period. But in many ways, it's also one of the best ones. Like, I just enjoyed every one of the gags, like from start to finish, not just like not just the controversial one that everyone's talking about, but every single segment had like something really funny about Star Trek, and just made me laugh. Like, whether it was like, really visceral type of stuff to like just really, kind of cerebral kind of stuff. And I love this episode. It's wild. That's the only way I have to describe it. It's zany.
That's interesting. I actually thought it was more tame and reined in than the show often is. But I'll wait for my thoughts. Brian, what about you?
Easily the best one of the season so far. I mean, maybe what we've got one more, two more,
Two more.
two more, and
Yeah.
maybe they'll top it. I didn't quite like it as much as the last couple, as some of the best of season one, but it was right up there. It was a hell of a lot of fun. I laughed hard. I never felt it never felt particularly predictable, at least not until the very end. And that was nice. Even if the rules of the game, rules literally, were laid out pretty solidly at the beginning. I guess as I was trying to figure out what is it about, and I mean, I guess there's some general sort of don't be a dick to your employees thing, kind of, and a bit of the your boss has it harder than you might think, kind of general anti-classism going on there. It also seemed to have a very solid and strongly felt tests are dumb and pointless kind of verve to it. That just anything related. The tests themselves were just continually shown to be inherently useless for measuring for getting any sort of meaningful data out of, and for a variety of reasons. But there doesn't seem to be any sort of acknowledgement that this was ever a good idea, or that there could be a version of this that was a good idea. It kind of seems like, no, this was just dumb piled on dumb on here. And I certainly can see I feel like sometimes this country in the educational department has gotten really, really obsessed with tests.
Oh yeah,
and
especially in our state, in Texas.
Yes.
Not to interrupt you, but yeah, like standardized testing has like really plagued us. Like I'm
Yeah.
in my 30s, and even me like going to school was all geared towards standardized testing, and yeah, it's I think gotten worse actually since then.
Yeah. Tests don't make anybody smarter. So filling up your classroom time with tests doesn't actually provide any education whatsoever. If you're
Yeah, I mean, I got lucky and I think I was the last generation that had just the ACT and the SAT and like a couple of practice tests as the priorities. But now there's like so many tests, it's insane.
Yeah. So I can kind of see how this could be a commentary on today's society, and the mindset of more of the administration often than the educators. It's more of the people administering the schools systems that seem to think that more tests make things better. So yeah, I enjoyed that. I enjoyed them doing. I don't know if Star Trek's ever really commented on that, or even the education systems as a whole. There's probably an exception I'm thinking of. There's probably some place where they've said something about national education that I've missed. But yes, yeah, it was a hell of a lot of fun. I laughed. I love the in jokes or Easter eggs or whatever, Gorn eggs, and yeah, I'm quite happy with it.
Very good.
Well, I'd love to talk a little bit more later, Brian, because I took all of that, but what you said about testing and education and applied it to the corporate world, and it was like spot on.
Okay,
in terms
I've
of
never
that kind of
managed
stuff
to
it.
I've never managed to dip my foot into that aspect of the corporate world, so I don't know what it's like. But if it fits, it fits.
If the
So,
shoe fit as Russian epic of Cinderella.
yes.
If shoe fits, wear it.
Well, man, does everyone from Pandro just really fucking suck? Like, we're 2 for 2 with just complete total assholes. They're just kind of annoying. Just how they're always like falling apart and like have weird little limbs that pop out of their
It's yeah.
bottom half. Like, I don't know, it's weird, but I kind of hate them.
I was hoping to glean insight on this character by watching Bem. To see more, and I was just as baffled when I finished that, if not more baffled. I was like, "Wow."
We'll talk more about it. I think that's my least favorite episode of the animated series, and I love the animated series. I rank it over Next Generation in my ranking of the shows. But
I remember Bem was pretty grim, but and I say that as somebody who does like a lot of the animated series, but I remember Bem was.
Yeah, for me that's the bottom. That's the worst. Still better than your typical, Next Generation season 1, 2, or 7 episode, but not great.
No.
In many ways, when we talk about that episode, it kind of mirrors this episode structurally in an odd way, because then you have the deity of Delta Theta 3 and all kinds of weird stuff happens. So yeah, that's a crazy episode.
But yeah, I mean, beyond that, for me, I also really loved this episode. These last 3 Lower Decks have just been knocking it out of the park. Some of the best Star Trek I've seen since... I really liked Picard, but I got to go back to like season 4 of Enterprise or season 7 of DS9 for Star Trek. I've enjoyed this much. I loved like those last 3 episodes we got in season 1 of Lower Decks, and then these last 3 we've gotten out of season 2 are just stellar, and then there's two more on the way, so I'm hoping that just continues this trend. Would love for like this, what we're seeing here, to be kind of the status quo. More of this and less of what we got with Strange Energies at the opening of the season. But yeah, this episode was really cool. There was no A story or B story like there typically is. It was just the entire crew all dealing with the same obstacle, but the neat device of the holopods allowed them to kind of put different characters in different scenarios. So that was a lot of fun. You could kind of do like this cool revisit of all these really neat Star Trek scenarios, a lot of stuff that I love, like Wrath of Khan or Search for Spock or the Mirror Universe. So, for me, all of that stuff really resonated. And they also like don't have like the tropey explanation of like the holodeck breaking down or something. It actually like made sense while they're dealing with this. It played better the second time when I realized all the tests were rigged, and that's why some things were as ridiculous as they were in there. It's like, oh yeah, they're designed to be unwinnable. So that makes a lot more sense for some of those scenarios. But the biggest highlights for me were definitely Boimler being a badass, even though that gag at the end slightly cheapens it, but he got his 100% score. He did it. So I loved seeing that, and also I loved Mariner and Freeman getting to work together and be this cool mother-daughter duo. They talked about in Strange Energies how they had worked together some, but it was all like telling us and not showing us, so I'm glad they actually showed us in this episode. But yeah, it was great. I loved it.
I can see how the writers would have been sitting around thinking, okay, we don't want to do anything in these holopods that we would have later done for a full-length episode. So we have to be very careful that whatever we pick for these holo tests is something that isn't going to trample on our possibilities, because we don't want to have a great idea for an episode, but then say, oh, that's kind of like that holopod thing we did before. So I can see how they'd have to, think very carefully about stuff. And for the most part, they got around that by choosing stuff that was so hyper-specific that you would never use it for you would never wrap a full episode around that idea. So, but yeah, I thought that was some interesting and different types of storytelling.
Well, I'm just going to go ahead and go into the episode breakdown, where we'll kind of take the episode piece by piece and discuss it. But let's start with the opening and kind of the setup for our story. We open with the satellite being repaired, or relay station, I suppose, and we get the joke. They had given this already away, or I'm sorry, they'd given this away already in one of the trailers where they showed the ship go into warp without them. You know, they get the distress call, so that kind of made it make more sense here than what they showed in the trailer. But yeah, they get abandoned on the satellite for 6 hours, and that starts the conflict between Mariner and Freeman, where Mariner says, "You don't care about the lower deckers; we're all expendable to you." And they have the Pedronian, I guess, consultant is what they described her as in the synopsis. But yeah, the Pedronian Sherry Yin Yim, who I might call Sherry Bing Bang for the rest of the show, because that's what Mariner called her at one point. But she comes onto the ship to basically, run these drills, and there's like this neat idea of the crew being flipped, where the senior staff will assume the duties of the lower deckers, and the lower deckers will assume the duties of the senior staff. Not quite sure how exactly that works when there's, you would imagine, so many more lower deckers than senior staff on board the ship, but I guess there's a way to make that work. So we get the holopods, where they run through these different scenarios. But just this opening, like this concept, what did y'all think about this initially, watching this for the first time?
It just occurred to me just now that Rutherford is really dropping the ball if he can't figure out a way to use the power supply from the satellite to keep the suits running for more than 6 hours. But yeah, it was fun in the usual. I don't think, kind of definitely pushing into the, I don't think this would ever happen in a live action Star Trek way, as far as them getting abandoned.
Or Star Trek that's not a dedicated comedy, because you can do this in live action.
Yeah,
I was actually vibing with the whole, like, I kind of want to have a drill day. Like, it's like when I initially saw it, I was like, this might not be a bad idea. It's like a cool way to test your crew, and like, just little mini Kobayashi Marus everywhere.
Yeah. Starfleet likes their weird role-playing scenario
psych
tests.
testing.
Yeah, like the psych test and stuff like that. Kobayashi Maru. The satellite thing actually kind of disappointed me when I saw it in the trailer. I rolled my eyes at oh yeah, they're just gonna be too stupid of a ship that they don't notice that they left 6 people behind. But when I saw it in context and was like, oh, there is the distress call from the Bakersfield. Okay, that makes a little bit more sense. There is something urgent. And then the explanation we got in sickbay, where Ransom said that Mariner didn't check out the magnetic boots. So I guess they weren't supposed to be over on that relay station. I'm not really sure what the whole story there is, but I can imagine that scenario. In real life, accidents like that happen, a ship departs, leaves someone behind, or it wasn't as outrageous as I thought it was when I saw the trailer. So that's why I said this episode is kind of tame. A lot of the stuff in this episode felt believable to me for the Star Trek universe.
See, I thought, especially given the nature of the distress call, that it was even more egregious, because they're stuck in a time loop. You could probably take a few years before you go rescue them. And it's just going to inconvenience them when they get out and discover that their kids are all grown up. But so yes, you should get on it, but it doesn't have to be burn out the engines to get there. You fly her apart. You don't need that for this kind of crisis. I also thought Freeman apparently doesn't apologize at all. And the idea that
I feel like in that scene in sickbay, she starts to but then Mariner's just not having it.
You can't have her apologize here, because that diminishes your payoff at the end of the episode when they have a big gift apology.
It just makes me dislike her more, because she doesn't. I admittedly, Mariner has trouble apologizing. Apple doesn't fall far from the tree here, but so there is at least some sort of thematic consistency. But I was like, really? Wow, you should be leading with that. I'm so sorry. That should be the first words out of your mouth. I did think it was interesting they said magnetic boots instead of gravity boots, because they missed a chance for an Easter egg there, a fairly obvious one. but I guess that's because in First Contact they talk about magnetics, I think, or something when they stick to the hull. I also thought it was weird that there isn't a established protocol for departing the ship that logs things like that, so that there's somebody on the bridge who knows who's off the ship at any given time, or if it's a bunch of people, at least knows there's a bunch of people off the ship.
There might be some truth to that California class reputation there.
Yeah,
Sounds like
I guess who's the first officer?
Ransom. Jack Ransom.
Yeah, it's really Ransom's fault. It's not the captain's job to know about these little things. It's Ransom's job to take care of the crew, and it's the captain's job.
And we've seen him be negligent this whole season too.
I feel like it was Mariner's fault though. Like she didn't like sign out that she was leaving the ship.
She didn't sign out the boots. I mean, there's got to be more to leaving the ship than signing out the boots. do they like have a list where they list all the gear that's been signed out, but not a list of who's off the ship?
Yeah, it's when you pull the environmental suit out of the locker, when the boots disconnect.
Yeah,
that's when they know. That's how they track it. That's how the computer tracks it.
I'll just say what's probably happening is it's like a systemic issue. It's just like everyone in the Cerritos just messes up, so no one's actually turning on that system that's supposed to auto track life forms from the Cerritos, and auto beam them, back to the ship in an emergency situation. Like all of that's not working because it's like the Cerritos crew set it up. So
I guess. I mean, we're starting to move into the territory of it might have been better if they failed the test. But speaking of the test, the drill instructor then is not Starfleet. Is that's my understanding?
I think that's safe to say. Although sometimes you're in Starfleet and you don't wear a uniform, like if you're Counselor Maglimo or Counselor Troy. So do other people besides like the therapists do that?
And I mean, the counselors are kind of crew personnel stuff, so that's kind of what she's doing as well, I guess. But
I think that
it feels really
in BEM in the animated series one. Because he's a commander, he has a rank, but
he's not Starfleet. He's in the Pendronian military. So that's what I assumed was going on here. That she's just like a consultant from the Pendronians who like is supposed to be like really good at efficiency, and I guess Starfleet was like contracting out. Maybe we can get like these Pendronians to come see if they boost our efficiency, and it clearly isn't working because we'll find out that they're thinking of discontinuing this whole gig that she has.
Yeah, how would you get to the point where you're having somebody who's never served in Starfleet judging whether or not crews are working, or whether or not a crew is an efficient Starfleet crew or should be broken up?
Because that happens all the time. Yeah. That happens all the time with like every job, every career field. They always bring in like these outside contractors who have no idea what the hell's going on, and they like evaluate you and like grade you and determine how good of a job you're doing when they don't even understand it.
Do we really feel Starfleet has run that poorly, not just on the Cerritos, but as a whole organization?
But they say that they're thinking about getting rid of the program because they don't like it. So I love that line of dialogue because it made it for me. It made all that work. It like fit into place. Yeah. Perfect.
I mean, her running around and testing people, okay, but her being given the power to disband a whole ship strikes me as being way too much power for an experimental program. So.
I feel like they're kind of like the Binars, but for human resources type stuff. Like, the Federation outsources Binars for like ship computer, IT stuff, and so they outsource HR to like these guys.
I didn't feel like it was HR. I felt like it was like efficiency.
All right, fine. The efficiency department, because Ben himself is like basically tasked with judging.
He was there to like grade Kirk and Spock.
Grade Kirk and Spock. So it's kind of like it kind of fits with like what they're doing.
So the Pendronians obviously have some type of like reputation.
They have a contract with a Admiral.
Even though I hate both the ones that we met, but
they're awful people. They're awful persons.
And it was fun for me to see like the cargo bay full with pretty much every character we've ever seen on the ship. Like I recognize like so many people back in the background. Like you see Maglimo and Kayshawn and Casey and Castro and Jennifer and Winger Bingston Jr., whatever his name is.
My boy.
The
That's my boy.
what is it? Vendome, the Bolian. Vendome.
Yeah, that's right.
The Cation, who I want his name to be Larry. His name should really be Larry. But, I mean, not Cation, Kazenti. I'm sorry. But yeah, our Kazenti crewman. So I like that.
What's cool about this picture is that like nowadays the way they animate, like a lot of these characters are all locked in somewhere, like the way they look. We're just meeting the whole entire crew of Lord X. All of these people could have stories that come to life in future episodes. They've already been sprinkling in new people here and there, so this is kind of a cool cast photo of like the potential stories in Lord X, which is
like
neat.
Casey, for example. He's been in the show since the very first episode.
Yeah.
But he just didn't have anything significant to do until a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, totally. There's a lot of neat looking characters in there.
These holopods, I mean, maybe this is new tech, but this, given how, whereas I have this issue with how they don't have quarters for all the lower deckers, it often, when you look at the schematics, holodecks take up so much space on a ship that that you would often have to probably schedule your holodeck time, days in advance to get a slot on a holodeck on a starship, because I'd expect they'd be pretty popular on long missions. And these pods seem to solve that entire problem. You can put a cargo bay and basically have 30 holodecks in one room. So I guess I'm going to put that down to new tech and they didn't really have the ability to build these micro holodecks until recently.
Yeah. And they are more limited than a full-fledged holodeck, because we do see like invisible walls, as you call them in video games. But yeah, like some of the characters, they're not allowed to like stray off the given path. So it is a miniaturized holodeck, but it's also slightly limited. Or that could have been a result of the tampering.
And
also,
and as was pointed out on my stream, that it creates like a other picture of the event you're going through. Like it shows you the exterior of the Enterprise blowing up and stuff. So it works differently.
I assumed that was on the big screen that everyone was watching other people take the tests.
I like that.
But it is certainly a dramatic flair that somebody went to the trouble of creating that didn't actually have to be there. Well, now I'll wait on that. So, the rank flipping. Or whatever, the having the lower deckers do the senior officer jobs and vice versa. We are to assume that is part of the rigging of the test. Yes.
Possibly. It definitely caught Freeman off guard. She wasn't expecting that when Sherry Bing Bang told her.
Because it just seems absurd that we want to see how well this crew does its job. So we're going to make sure everyone's not doing their job and then test them. I'm like, even if you're pro test, this is a dumb idea.
Who is running the ship, by the way? The M5 or something? Like, that'd be really funny. Just plug in the M6.
I mean, literally, if Starfleet is doing its job right, then the lower deckers shouldn't be qualified to do the upper decker jobs, because they would have been promoted to those positions if they were qualified. So by definition, if things are working right, they must not be qualified for those jobs. So they should be failing them. And if the system works the way it's supposed to. So yeah, I can only assume this must be part of how she's screwing up the test to make sure everyone fails, is because that just makes no sense from a point of view of judging whether or not a starship should be allowed to exist, or a crew should be allowed to exist. If it was just to test versatility, fine. But they're deciding whether or not the crew's disbanded with this test, and that you should be testing them on how they actually work. For tests like that.
if Bing Bang was doing her, is that what Mariner calls her, Bing Bang?
Sherry Bing Bang. But
Very big.
If Bing Bang
her
was
actual
doing her
name is Sherry Yen Yum.
That's right. If she was
Instead
doing
of
her
instead
job,
of Ari Bin Baum, it's Shari Yen Yum.
if she was doing her job right, she would have consulted the publicly available like footage or whatever level clearance she has footage of the Cerritos, and she would have seen that the lower deckers are constantly complaining that they could do the senior officers' jobs and stuff like that. So she would have built it in my mind, as like an exercise to kind of like put them in their place a little bit if she was really doing her job seriously, but she was obviously not doing her job seriously, so I don't know if that's happening. But yeah, that's
Well,
kind of a thing that in the corporate culture world we do experience, like I like variations of this where it's like trying an IT role when you're actually a administrator or something like that. You know, they like hop you around different departments to get people to have empathy for the other departments.
yeah,
But
or like the secret boss thing. Like sometimes
oh
like they
gosh,
do that where like they do take someone
Secret Boss Kylo Ren comes to
someone in
mind.
someone in charge
Sorry.
to do a more entry level job. But
Exactly.
let's talk about the drills themselves. I'm just going to go over the drills that our lower deckers go through, and then we can talk about them. But we get a few with Mariner, and we get multiple drills with her, starting off with the Mirror Universe encounter, which I thought she would do pretty well at. You know, I thought that she would be pretty good at pretending to be a evil maniac and infiltrating the Mirror Universe, but not so much. She didn't make it too far on the Mirror Universe ship. Tindy does the medical ethics,
This was
which was
great.
a very specific callback to the Next Generation we'll talk about later. But yeah, the ridiculousness here, like the Klingon, who needs to die. He can't bear the shame of surviving his injury, of hurting his back while picking up a peanut, and the nurse is saying like, "Oh my God, he's gonna live. There's nothing we can do to kill him." I was like, "That is
Time of
crazy."
life.
Like when they said like the drills were rigged, I was like, "Okay, that makes a little bit more sense now." We had
Time
the
of
Old
life,
West.
that was the best part of that gag.
Yeah.
Was like time of
Time of
life.
life, yeah.
Yes.
We got the Old West planet, where Mariner also didn't do very well. We had Rutherford reenact Spock's sacrifice, or attempt to reenact Spock's sacrifice in the Wrath of Khan, but he couldn't even get the door open to
I wanted this to last longer. But it was awesome.
the destruction of the Enterprise. It was very nice to see the old Constitution refit on screen again.
Looking very nice in that.
And of
shot,
course,
too.
Boimler dealt with the Borg for the entire episode, very very confidently. Says he's read everything about the Borg, and I like that even now that we see a Boimler who has grown as a Starfleet officer and has grown as a person, become more confident. He's still kind of his own worst enemy. We're here, it's
Yeah.
he's obsessed with getting the perfect score, and again, talking about video games, if you've ever tried to get like that 100% clearance on a video game, or unlock a specific trophy or achievement or whatever, he's basically achievement hunting. So yeah, he's got to do like every little side mission, get every bonus point, do it within the time limit.
Good.
And he's just replaying the thing over and over and over again. Oh, and
I love that. That was just so fun.
Cover your eyes. Here it comes.
the big one, the big one was the I guess the naked time thing where Mariner sees the crew turned into sex crazed maniacs, which really wasn't all there was to it in the naked time or the naked now, the TNG follow up.
No, I know. It's true.
Yeah, so Mariner
It's naked time.
Mariner gets pretty grossed out from some of the images. Apologies or your welcomes, depending on how you feel about some of these pictures. If you're looking at this in the video, but the scene was so graphic and hard to bear for Mariner that she just ejected herself out the airlock and basically like killed herself to get out of the simulator. So.
Oh, wait. That's how it ended on the Tsiolkovsky. That's exactly the same thing that happened on the Tsiolkovsky.
I did appreciate that her way of failing was what happened to the terrorists.
Oh, yeah.
I really did appreciate
Correction, they were blown out.
They
Yes,
were
yes.
yes, exactly. That's what like aside from all the naked, it's naked time stuff. That ending was just brilliance in my mind as far as like what happened on the Tsiolkovsky. Oh,
When I saw this, I knew that some people. I'm not going to judge, but I knew that like some people that I know, some Star Trek fans I know, were not going to react well to this. But it's pretty harmless. I think like the way it's presented had like big impact because it's so like unexpected and out of left field. But I mean like it was like we see like some side boob. Okay, that's been a thing in Star Trek since the original
we see
series.
a bacchanalia. This is what a bacchanalia basically.
We see like some guys' bare butts running around. Like okay, like we saw like Chakotay's butt cheeks in Star Trek Voyager.
We did.
So you didn't sleep through that one?
No, I didn't sleep through that one.
Imagine that. I mean, like we also like saw like full on like Klingon nipples in like mid sex during Star Trek Discovery. So it's like it's fine. Like this all fits in the universe. If you want to talk about like the future that Gene Roddenberry envisioned, like listen to Ira Stephen Bear talk about Gene Roddenberry's pitch to him on what Captain's Holiday should have been like.
Oh wow.
Where he basically said like he wanted like naked people running around and like all kinds of people making out and like boys and girls making out with each other and then boy on boy action and girl on girl action. Like this was the future Gene Roddenberry wanted.
This is his vision realized.
It was also what he wanted for the phase 2, and some of the artwork developed. Shows rec rooms with there are some naked crew members in the background making out, and there was explicitly in the write-ups and writer's guide that there'd be nothing unusual about seeing a naked crew member or even crew members having sex in the rec lounge or something.
Yeah,
and that was absolutely Roddenberry's.
I also feel like Starfleet's one of those organizations. They've got like all kinds of weird ships. They might have a whole naked ship where you have like instead of turbolifts like wet slides or something like where everyone's
instead of there being like an all Vulcan ship, like we know that there was. That was the Intrepid, right? The Intrepid was the all Vulcan ship. There's also like an all nudist ship. I hadn't thought of that one. I think there might be like nudist planets that have like really good like environmental controls.
Yeah, it's totally in the realm of possibility. Now I believe that could be a thing.
I did feel it was really, I guess this is just a new facet of Mariner we have not encountered, that she has got basically naked phobic. I mean, her reaction, she basically completely breaks down and is unable to process or problem solve just because she sees some naked people. Well, apparently she doesn't want to live in the Roddenberry universe.
It was one specific thing that I think that like really did it to her. That was like later when Boimler's trying to talk about how like, oh yeah, they stuck implants up my, and she like cuts them off, and she's like, no, ear, because like she doesn't want to be reminded of like the gaze that she got up his.
But
you know what?
When she
up his wormhole.
When she freaks out on the bridge, it's because she has a flashback to Shax, not Boimler. So it's more than just one person. She's clearly got a hang up, which is fine, but it is a little bit of a surprise.
But when it was people she was attracted to, like when it was Jennifer and Barnes, she was titillated by that.
I thought she didn't like the Andorian girl.
I think that's
doesn't like her, but she's attracted to her. It's like
okay.
I've had that situation in my life.
Generally, once I don't like them, any attraction I had vanishes. But
anyways, Fathery, aside from all that, this is like the craziest kind of scene we've ever seen in any Star Trek. It's not
the craziest.
we see all those frozen naked people.
But they're not moving around and writhing and like imagine this in live action. Just like imagine.
We basically did see that.
Imagine a Klingon chick straddling a dude, riding them with like a big close up of her boobs right in front of the camera.
Yeah.
I feel like this tops the Mocklin thing on the gag that they did on the Orville.
I don't watch that show, so I don't know what you're talking about.
There's a gag on the Orville that I thought was like the wildest thing I'd ever seen in science fiction, and then Lower Decks did this, and I was like, yes, Lower Decks, Star Trek, gain your. Oh, you're on mute, Brian.
It it feels like the future Roddenberry wanted, and B, it fits the data points we saw in the Next Generation. I can always get the titles mixed up, but whichever was the
Naked Now came second.
Okay, the Naked it fits what we saw in the Naked Now, in as much as this is what we can get away with showing on TV at the time, but they pushed it and then implied that there was a lot more going on out of camera range. And this, I don't see how this one was rigged. What was rigged about it?
I think just probably the intensity of it. Like, this isn't exactly all there was going on with the Naked Time and the Naked Now. Like, it was more of just like people were drunk. So they acted like they were intoxicated. So it wasn't like a full on orgy in the bar. So I think they just made it like a little bit more like overwhelming.
I would think being chased.
I would think being chased by a topless helmsman with a sword is going to be more intense than seeing some naked people making out on a bar.
This is a different. Remember, this is a variant. So this is like not the Naked Time. Even though it's called Naked Time, the scenario, it's actually the Naked Now like scenario, because this is that variant virus that was making everyone horny and drunk on Enterprise D, because like Dr. Crusher couldn't control her feelings, and there's like all kinds of crazy stuff like this going on. And so I think that's what this is like meant to fully homage. But also, in a weird way, each of these segments kind of give the crew like even though it's like very I think, as Jill had pointed out like in another chat, like it's very shades of gray. It's like little flashbacks to previous things. This was like a perfect, if the computer really can recreate all the crew based on what we've seen and like how they'd react, this is like a perfect snapshot of the Cerritos crew's inhibitions and like what they would do in a situation through just one lens, granted, which is the sexual lens. But it's like a perfect snapshot of that in just like a few seconds, and I love it because it's like, oh, this sheds a lot of light on like the characters here, especially Boimler with that audacious move at the end.
What I thought was so funny was Dr. Tiana like running around on all fours chasing the dude. It's just a funny visual because like her like eye level is like right at the guy's ass, like chasing like right behind him. It's just the absurdity of that. And also at the same time, when you see that scene, you also have Billups in the background, who we suspect might be asexual now after we saw more on him last week, and he's actually not engaging in any of the fun. He is working on his pad, you know, probably like doing engineering stuff. He's still nude, but he's not interested in engaging with any of the other people there. So I thought that was a clever little character detail. These animators really think about this stuff.
They really do. And who knows, he might be, you know, looking at a simulation that, you know, of the engines working at warp 9 or something. You know,
well, that's his sexuality. It's
like that might be what his thing is. Who knows?
I think I would have. I liked what they did. I think I would have left him in a uniform just to kind of highlight how something different's going on in that corner of the picture. But you know, it's fine. They did acknowledge it. They did work it in. Oh God, what was I going to say? Oh yes. All the tests, the video of all the tests is apparently publicly posted so that the rest of the crew gets to watch this as well if they so desire.
Well,
so they get to see themselves being matched up however the computer or Bing Bang thought they should be matched up. I can see how that would be perhaps a little disturbing.
What about any of the other drills? Rutherford, Tindy, the other Mariner stuff? Any thoughts on any of those before we move on?
I liked the mental image I've built of Boimler in my head was exactly validated by Boimler's mission or test, because I feel like he's this guy who is incredibly book smart and in the end, a holodeck is just a book test as far as he's concerned. He's actually really, really capable as long as A, he's studied, and B, he's not afraid of getting hurt. If you put those two things there, he's suddenly a cosmic badass, easily equal to Mariner,
well
and
stated.
just as determined to keep facing the situation, the challenge again and again and again, even probably more than she would be. And that very much fits with the Boimler I have in my mind. And Boimler probably actually spends a lot of time doing heroic stuff on the holodeck. That really, I don't know if they've explicitly stated that, but it really feels like, that's something he has done. And so, yeah, I really loved that he was just totally cool, totally chill, and determined to complete every side quest, as you put it. That was a lot of fun. Let's see.
He practices like even meeting with the captain in the holodeck. He runs
Oh
through any like situation. He runs through most situations in the holodeck.
He's less neurotic about it now.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's definitely. And Brian, I recall you saying this, from a year ago. But yeah, like if he's prepared, he kicks ass. Like in Temporal Edicts, where he's able to do like all the little busy work jobs that everyone else was like so overwhelmed with. So he is on top of his game whenever he is able to be on top of his game. As long as he's done the prep work.
Yeah. Let's see, the mirror universe simulation. Why is it so inaccurate? It's clearly a 24th century ship, yet it's the 23rd century empire aboard the ship.
It's not the 23rd century. That's actually like the mirror universe logo. It comes from. Well, I'll talk about it in the Gorn eggs.
All right.
But it's from some of like the non-canon mirror universe work. Actually lines up pretty well with it.
Oh.
All right, so it's a different mirror universe than the one we are used to have seen on all the TV episodes. That's what you're saying?
No, it fits in with like the Deep Space Nine stuff too.
Oh, okay.
I look forward to hearing how that fits, because it doesn't look like that's happening in any mirror universe we've seen on television. So as far as I can tell, at all.
I do want to appreciate that before we move on to the next segment. That segment was really funny also. Like it had like crazy stuff going on with Miggly Moo in the Falconer gear. Like it's like actually what you would put on a Falcon. Like he's wearing like basically what I guess we would call a quote unquote gimp suit, but it's like what you actually would put on a Falcon's head when they're just like sitting on your arm and stuff like that. So yeah, it's like his bondage.
I've heard some people compare this to Mirror Universe Garrick when he was when like Mirror Universe Worf had him like chained up, and I was like, no, like this is not Mirror Universe Garrick. Like that dude was like a prisoner. This guy is like Chief Lundry, their transporter operator. He's doing some type of like weird sex stuff with McLean. No, I shouldn't say weird. I don't want to judge. Assuming if they all consent to it. I'm not going to kink shame the mirror universe because we'd be here all day if we're going to get started with that.
It's true. Good point. I do like the harness too. I mean, I kind of want to cosplay that. That outfit, like it's really, like make a giant falconer's helmet. It might be
the
fun.
Furry community would again, not judging anyone, I'm just saying like the furry community would probably really enjoy that, if you had like a green feathered suit with that harness on.
Yeah, it might be great. But anyways, the other gags in this are really funny too, but I loved the the Rutherford Billups horny torturing duo. Like,
because that's like, it's making fun of all the mirror universe stuff we've seen. Like people are always getting tortured and people are always horny. And they gave both of them beards.
Yes, that's right. So good.
But also I thought Mariner looked cool and sexy with the outfit.
Yes.
There's like some strong influences from Uhura from the original series, but
I did. The computer says you can't get creative and to her and shuts her down real quick when she tries to do a bit more than the basic mission. But Boimler gets very, very creative throughout his thing, both before and after he's trying to win it. And the computer never shuts him down and says, no, that's not part of the mission, as far as we can tell. And I thought that was a real disconnect, that there's these creativity walls on everybody's test except Boimler's.
Shuri Yin-Yum did say that she didn't have time to alter all the tests. Like, she didn't get to the horses.
Yeah.
So it could be she didn't get to the Borg either.
I'm gonna say that's what happened. Is that's probably like so.
In fact, the Borg one is probably like a harder one. The Borg one is probably pretty challenging. I mean, they are the Borg. You know,
it should be a hard one.
She probably didn't prioritize rigging that one. She was going after like the easier ones, making sure they became unwinnable.
Yeah,
it's true, but
especially if she was assigning Boimler, who perhaps in reports doesn't look like the most capable of officers.
Did y'all think it was weird? I know, like, in animation, they don't show like the same level of details as what we see in live action, and the show, you know, it does a good job picking and choosing what details to emphasize. But I did notice that, like, the Klingon that we see, like, he doesn't have like the Klingon chest. Sometimes when we would see like a Klingon with no shirt on, in Star Trek, they have like you know, they would actually put like prosthetics on the actors.
Yeah, unless it was Lersa or Betor.
Yeah.
Yeah, they, for obvious reasons, wanted to maintain a familiar human-looking appearance on that area of them.
But yes, I did notice the
half other species.
He's a half-sea, like B'Elanna.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure.
Or Kalar.
But he did have the. Well, you'll go over it in the Easter eggs, probably. I won't say.
I think the one I laughed at the most of these was the. I guess as far as just what the simulation was the you got to put the Klingon down one. That one I laughed at harder. I think Boimler's was more funny, but it was because of how he reacted to it that made it funny. Whereas that the put the Klingon down one was just kind of an inherently funny idea.
Geek Filter is in our live audience, and he's pointing out that the Mirror Universe logo is from the IDW comics. And yes, I was gonna point that out. So that's why I think it's okay to, you can kind of like headcanon it in there with some of the J.K. Woodward comics and, you know, their explanation for the Starfleet, the Terran Empire Starfleet of the 24th century that they show us there.
So they're basically saying that some version of those comics is now canon.
At least that logo. Canon. Well, it could just be a creation for the holodeck simulation, so it's canon as a holodeck simulation, but I think probably someone knows that symbol exists in the Mirror Universe in canon.
So,
it must be in the Starfleet
it's a tricky nebula to navigate.
It must be in the Zephram Cochrane Memorial Library as this wait, where is it? Yeah. The information must be there from something, so maybe someone went on a mission and recorded that data or whatever, and you know, it's just in the library.
Anything else on any of the drills?
This one was too short. I really loved this one a lot. If this one was longer,
we tell the podcast audience which one you're talking about.
Oh, sorry, yes, the one that was the Wrath of Khan scenario, the needs of the many.
Yeah. I just caught that the Enterprise graphic in this slide is anachronistic. It's the right Enterprise. But it's their Enterprise, like Star Trek Enterprise type NX class graphics. They're not the graphics from either the 23rd century or the 24th. They kind of had the color scheme of the 24th, but the design looks closer to the NX class graphics than anything.
Yeah, that's 22nd century, but with 24th century colors on a 23rd century. Man, she was really messing up these programs when she was going in there.
I suppose, it doesn't have to be perfect.
Somewhere on Twitter, I wish I'd paid attention to this, but someone said it was a different operating system, not the LCARS. And they pointed out it was called like CMOS or C system, C something. I forget what it was, but it's something that was probably mentioned in one of the technical manuals or something from the TOS film era.
I did like seeing a monster maroon in animation.
Yeah.
I think I saw someone point out this is the first time we've had one of those on screen since Flashback on Voyager.
Oh wow.
Yeah, that was 25 years ago. So been a hot minute.
Yeah, it's over 25.
Long
For the
may
Starfleet
launch
uniform that was in
remember.
service the longest and is the weirdest compared to all the others.
Yeah.
uh,
I think actually it's
but
closer to 30 years, but
I think we will see some Monster
maybe it's
Maroons in
25.
Picard season 2.
Yeah.
Something's giving me a feeling that we will see more of them within the next few
Yeah.
months.
I originally had comments about this scene as far as how it was portrayed, but then she said she rigged the system, and then I was like, okay, that actually, all my comments go away now that I know that the test is rigged.
It kind of does seem that Rutherford is just too dumb to get the door open, because if you compare this to what Spock does, Spock doesn't have like that full engineering environmental suit. The only thing that Spock put on were the gloves. And that's the thing that Rutherford is missing. It's like, you needed the gloves, bro. That was it. But
Well, I think the test took the gloves away. That's how it's rigged.
Yeah.
Is that there are no gloves in the area. But so
and we see the holodeck, or I'm sorry, the holopod create the suit around Rutherford. And I think the same thing happens with Mariner when she goes into the Old West. It kind of creates like the cowboy hat and bandana on her. So it's like in Enterprise, and These Are the Voyages, when Riker could just go on the holodeck and all of a sudden he could be in an XO1 uniform. Whereas, most of the time when people are using holographic recreation, they have to dress up themselves before they go on board.
though you can just beam clothes onto yourself, as witnessed in Star Trek: The Motion Picture. So.
I would assume that like the Tricom badges in Discovery in the 31st century would be so advanced that you could just be naked and like you put one of those on your chest and it just replicates the uniform around you.
That's like Doctor Who technology there. Just
I guess
saying.
it's a question of where would the badge get the mass? It could certainly make a holographic outfit that would even feel real with force fields, but
It just has
I
a
think
really
it would
good
need
battery. It just has
And
like
what's the
enough
badge
energy. It
sticking
can
to?
convert that energy
Like, it
into
just-
matter.
Does it clench
Well,
into your skin? or
literally the densest way you can store energy is in matter. That's like the densest energy medium is matter and antimatter.
Mhm.
So, but I don't
It has
know.
a wireless. It has a wireless energy connection.
Yeah, it
It
could be
uses a
zero.
micro wormhole to pull energy. out
Yeah,
of
there could
somewhere
be
else.
some sort of it could be some 0 point energy system that's basically working on broadcast power, or it just collects air and recombines it into
has
clothing.
It has
So.
mini bizarre collectors that are and a tiny warp core. And that's
Well, it
how
wouldn't
it
need a
works.
warp core, but the Bassard collectors to collect the air and and then take it apart and put it together into clothing would be handy.
I
So
liked
that
it
could
better
be
when they were called ram scoops, but no one calls them that anymore.
Yeah.
They're the bizarre ram scoops back in the
Yeah,
day.
you know the Klingons call them ram scoops.
Yes, that's true.
Is that what Worf meant by ramming speed?
Yes.
He's like, no, I just want to pick up some hydrogen particles. I didn't mean like crash in the Borg ship.
Yeah. Ram scoop speed.
Let's get back on topic on the episode. Unless you have something else to add on those drills, I'll move
No,
along.
every one of them are.
I assume the Star
Everyone-
Trek 3 one we're going to discuss in a moment.
Yeah. There's more drills to talk about. We still
This
have
is the best
the
stream. I've never seen these
upper deckers.
graphics so well. So it's like...
But yeah, we get to see the lower deck trio without Boimler because he won't get out of the holopod. He's still trying to seek those achievements. But we see everyone else. They're celebrating in the ready room with all the senior officer replicators. Tindy, I guess, being an alien, and Orion had never had pesto before, and she's really into it. And then we see the lower deckers, being like, "Oh, it's not that bad to sleep in a hallway," and Dr. Tiana sleeps like a cat cuddled up with Shax, apparently. So that relationship's more serious than I thought. They're like cuddled up, in front of their coworkers like that. But though they go on a Klingon encounter, holopod drill, where we don't even see a Klingon. We instead see them have to stack these crates while I guess both Q and Jim Hadar, in addition to Klingons, are attacking the ship, and they can't get these crates to stay stacked. And then there's the joint mission, the senior staff and lower decker joint mission, the escape from space dock, where Captain Mariner has triggered her PTSD of naked shacks is triggered, and she
It's naked
freaks out.
time.
Her mom starts teasing her about the horse riding lessons not paying off, and anyways, they get in a fight. They are unable to pilot the ship out of space dock, and they do realize though that everyone doing each other's jobs. It's been like this great team building exercise that the whole crew seems to be getting along and having fun. So they go to Shari Yen Yam to, I guess, thank her for bringing the ship together and like, oh, I saw what you did there. And we get the twist. She's like, no, I rigged everything. I'm going to fail all of you. Your ship will be, your crew will be broken up and reassigned. And the one guy still in the holopod is Boimler, who is still trying to get that 100% score. He's finally gotten it, but Captain Freeman tells him, Boimler, you have to stay in there because as long as you stay in there, she can't submit the final results.
Not only that, the
So-
scenario with which he got it is insane. He's got like he's got like every Borg baby strapped to his person. He's captured several drones to liberate them. He's also given the Queen empathy.
Yes,
and,
he
it's
told them that
like-
he's taught the Borg Queen empathy. He defeated her in chess and taught her empathy.
Oh yeah, he defeated her in chess. I forgot about that part. That's like so good that he just, like and of course it's like the most perfect scenario. And he's about to finish the mission, and then this happens to him. It's terrible. It's so good.
Let me ask y'all something about the Klingon encounter, because it was the voice actor Phil Lamar, who does a ton of stuff, and he does some live action acting as well. But he did the voice. I recognized him doing the voice of this commander in the Klingon encounter, and the way he was animated, he looked a lot like Admiral Freeman. I thought, like maybe a younger Admiral Freeman.
Oh, interesting.
And it sounded like the same voice. He also plays Admiral Freeman. It sounded like the same voice he uses for him. So is this supposed to be like a younger, like Commander
like
Freeman?
a Commander Freeman. That's interesting. It could be.
Also, when it shows him, there's like a dude running on fire down the corridor behind him, which was just some visual humor.
They got the little fire extinguisher from Star Trek 2, don't they?
Oh my god, I missed that. I didn't have that in my Gornegs. But yeah, man, that's on screen for like 0.47 seconds, if that.
Yeah.
So that's incredible.
I'm wondering if it's just a coincidence because I would imagine that Freeman would say something. Well, no, they don't know about the Admiral. They don't know that she. That's right. There's like another secret, I think, which is they probably have it on the down low that they're married.
I don't think so. I mean, like they're both named Freeman. I don't think it's. I mean, like one of them changed their last name to match the other one, so it's probably pretty public.
So, yeah, that's a good point.
But I don't know. Just like maybe it's just like an older simulation from back when he was a commander or something.
Yeah.
But they do make fun of like why the crates are not very practical in their shape. It's obviously because they're supposed to look futuristic and spacey, not be practical things that people actually have to work with. But
the crates,
shining a light on that.
If you turned the crates 90 degrees and stacked them that way, they would be far more stable. Not stable enough for the amount of shaking the ship's doing, but more stable than they are in the shack's configuration.
They should have like really strong magnetism, like holding them together. Also, whatever, some kind of magnetic device.
I think I've said it before, but I've always wanted a scene where they fight off the Borg or the Klingons or whoever, and then there's lots of spaceship acting, and then afterwards they're like, we did it, and then Picard or whoever goes to their quarters and the door open and everything's a mess because all their stuff has been thrown all over the place during the fight, and they're like, not again. fucking Borg or whatever, and they start picking it up. They really need to do that gag because you never see that in the whole history of Star Trek, where they walk, I guess sort of in generations when the ship has crashed, but that's kind of like a whole nother level of doing of shaking. So
that would have
really
been
want
one
to see
more.
that.
That would have been two things in this episode that we've never seen in Star Trek had they done it.
Yeah.
The episode of Star Trek I always wanted to write, which is kind of like a lower deckish type story, but I always wanted to write like an episode from the point of view of your chief engineer character and just show like a whole day in the life of them, where like they they've been working on some problem. They get to bed late, but they wake up the next morning bright and early to get back to work on some other problem. And then like the ship is having to go through all kinds of crazy stuff, and we never see like the action on the bridge or get like the full impression of like what's actually going on. But they're dealing with like anomalies and engaging in battle and diplomacy and all this stuff, and things are just constantly breaking and engineering, and you just spend like the whole episode is just like the engineer just scrambling around trying to keep like the ship intact, and the whole time you have like the captain being like, I know it takes 8 hours to do this, but I need you to do it in 30 minutes, and just stuff like that. And then like them having like go like outside of the ship in an environmental suit to like repair something, and you see like this crazy battle in the background. I have no idea like the context of it. There's like stuff like that. Like that was always the idea of I had, and so I feel like in the Klingon encounter it kind of does that when parenthesis I in our live audience he's pointing out that you see the commander in the Robin. It's not just a Robin Hood outfit, but it's like a
military something.
It's like a clown collar and a Robin Hood hat, and then either military or he's going on a safari or something.
It looks like a World War I military outfit.
World War I, maybe.
I am far from an expert.
So yeah, but like we're not supposed to know why. It's just that's the joke of it. Is the mystery.
Really
But I did like seeing Freeman and Mariner, after like they have a fight where like they're literally like slapping each other like over the helm control, but then when they're bonding at the bar, when they're like, oh yeah, this sucks, but oh, look at like this good side effect, this is actually a good thing. And then when they're faced with the twist together, they're on like they approach it from like the same front. It's like a joint effort. And then when the stakes increase, where they're like, oh no, like we might like lose our ship, we might break up our crew, they continue to work together from this point on till the end of the episode, and they've never shown that to this degree.
I assume you enjoyed that one of the scenarios was very explicitly Star Trek 3.
Yeah, my favorite Star Trek movie.
I thought of you when I saw that, and I think it was an interesting.
Two of the scenarios. Were Star Trek 3, because the escape from space dock, that's like stealing the Enterprise, but with the Cerritos. They even have the Excelsior.
But what was the other one?
What's the other one?
Oh, that's Star Trek 2. You're right. Never mind.
Yeah.
They show clips in Star Trek 3 also. Yeah, they rewatch it in Star Trek 3.
They rewatch it. Yeah, that's probably why I was confused.
And if you were in Europe and watched Star Trek 3, then you got to see even more extended version of it, as I recalled. And they had a big clip of it.
No, that was for Star Trek 4. That was Star Trek 4. They did that.
Sorry. Yeah, you're right.
But I saw the death of Spock in the Star Trek 3 opening before I saw it in the Star Trek 2 ending. So. That was my introduction to the death of Spock. Was the Star Trek 3 recap?
It's kind of a
the death of Spock was my introduction to Star Trek. Full stop. That was, I think, the first Star Trek I ever saw. But I did think it was a very unusual choice for a test. Here, the simulation tests how good are you at violating Starfleet's rules and culture. To win, you have to be good at upsetting and pissing off the very people who decided what is and is not a good Starfleet officer. I was like, that is a really weird thing to pick for a test.
Why would you train people in Starfleet? Why would you train your fleet personnel on how to steal a starship from your space dock?
And how to ignore orders, and
but sometimes Starfleet gets taken over by conspiracy aliens or changeling shapeshifters that infiltrate. Like, so maybe there will come a time when you need that to happen.
So pick one of those as a scenario. Pick the little things with the bluegill aliens and the spikes.
I'm going to choose to believe that it was like Kirk or Scotty or like one of them who introduced that training scenario into the curriculum.
I love it.
It does sound like a Kirk thing. We need a scenario where they get to ignore admirals.
So I can show off how great I am.
Yes. Where cheating is part of the games. That's true. That simulation did illustrate very nicely why you shouldn't have close family members as your subordinates. They totally botch it because of their interpersonal relationship issues. I'm like, it absolutely I don't know if that's what the writers were quite intending when they wrote it, but my goodness, does it, at the same time that it's a simulation where you're supposed to break the rules, it also kind of validates a rule, or at least a guideline that we've seen in Star Trek, and something that I believe is a rule in the U.S. military, at least. So yeah, I mean, we've seen this before where their relationship, they sabotage each other because their relationship is so dysfunctional. But in this particular case where they're discussing following the rules versus breaking the rules and stuff, it was even a stronger highlight. Plus, this time they really screwed up because of it. They didn't even get through the doors.
This season, although this season I feel they get along more than they don't. So I feel like they are kind of coming to that. Even their relationships evolve, which I'm really appreciating.
They talk about it at the beginning of Strange Energies. They talk about how they'd been working together, but they didn't show it to us. And then here, the last few minutes of this episode, the resolution stuff that we're about to talk about, they show it there. So I feel like this is the first episode that really delivered on that. But again, that's why you have to show them, fighting and being confrontational with each other, because that way you can have the payoff later.
Why does Bing Bang just tell them that she's rigged the tests?
That's also consistent with Bem. That's also consistent with Bem, who blabbed his whole plan. And then felt bad about it. He was like, I was sent to judge. He's acting all coy and weird, and Kirk and Spock couldn't figure out. So again, this is I feel like that's one of the
general
things.
Villains should learn to not gloat.
That's
nothing good.
Exactly.
I don't know, but I feel like they think that they're all big badasses and they're untouchable when they do it.
but they Freeman could go and send a report, and there could be an investigation, and there's programming alterations to be studied, and she doesn't. It's not like she's deleted all the programs and stuff so that they have no place to search for her tampering. It's all still running in the same cargo bay. It's right there. She hasn't left the ship yet, so it just seems like, as soon as she admits it, it should be all over one way or the other, even if she's too stupid to realize it. And again, if she's that dumb, how did she get this job in the first place if she's that big of an idiot? But
yeah, I did have a similar thought about that. I think you just have to roll with it to move the story along.
Hashtag roll with it. I'm gonna start using that.
I guess they could have had Mariner and Freeman discover that it was all rigged through some other means or something.
Yeah, that would have made them look smarter too if they figured it out on their own rather.
But it would have taken up more screen time. So,
also, I think this is I'll just say that in a normal on a capital ship, it might take more to put you in crisis mode, and but on a ship like this, something like this may have put Freeman in crisis mode, and she's acting irrationally, which might serve you in a real conflict. But here it's she's well, I know she's just afraid of that result getting sent to Starfleet, so she doesn't want that other because it's probably automated.
You think she's less capable in this episode? Because I actually think she's the most capable here.
No. I think it's her. I think it's her freaking out that if it gets auto sent to Starfleet and the decommission process gets started, she's gonna have to explain everything and do paperwork. If she can avoid that part of it of having to file a counter, a counter report to prevent the to do all that, she's let me just get this over and done with. So she's let's Boimler, don't let the thing end so the results can't be auto sent, and I'm gonna take this woman on a joyride and make her change the results so that when Boimler does finish and it gets auto sent, there's no paperwork for me to do later. That's what I mean by crisis mode. She's dreading the paperwork, and she doesn't.
I don't know if that's that worth going into crisis mode over or not, but
I tell you, it's a California class ship. It's a different kind of crisis mode.
Yeah.
Let's talk about this resolution, because I really
I loved the little meta joke that she said most of the Federation don't even know Cerritos class starships exist.
Or California
Just like
class.
this
California
class.
sorry.
Like
I said
that,
Cerritos earlier.
it's this wonderful idea that we're just wedging this into continuity, and it's not really referenced outside of that. And I really enjoyed.
Although
that kind of
a little bird has told me that there will be a lower decks acknowledgement on screen in Star Trek Picard.
Oh
yeah,
wow!
I figured it was only inevitable, but
yeah.
That's cool. I can't wait to see what that is.
I love this moment where Mariner says "real captain" on deck, and she's kind of, like willingly like giving the captain's chair back to her mom because they are on the same side now, going against Shari Yin Yum or Bing Bang or whatever we're calling her at this point. But yeah, when they obviously like are all in on it, and we'll have the revelation later that there is some trickery going on here. But I guess the crystalline entities aren't as extinct as we thought they were. There's a whole bunch of them, or maybe this is all simulated. I don't know, but yeah, they try to put the ship in dangerous situations, including encountering a crystalline entity that's feeding off unstable nebula radiation. There's some transphasic energy shaking the ship and shaking our Sherry Yin Yang. I already forgot the right way to say her name. I'm just going to go with Bing Bing. But shaking her apart. We see a black hole, and there's time quakes, and we get some cool distortion. That's a very specific callback. And eventually they do convince her to change the score, give the Cerritos crew a 100% passing score, and so everything's all taken care of. They've won, except one last thing. Boimler is still stuck in the holopod where he's encountering the Borg Queen, and we get this nice guest star appearance, or not appearance, but voice performance from Alice Krieg. I hear some people say her name Kriega.
Oh, that might be correct, actually.
I mean, she's South African, I think. So I don't know if that's like
I have to go back and listen
a Dutch
to
pronunciation or something, but
there's a podcast Trek Reprise did with an interview with her, and
yeah,
he says it correctly in that,
we need to hear how she says it. But
she says it rather.
Is she Starfleet royalty?
Yes.
Or I'm sorry, Star Trek royalty.
Star Trek. She's Star Trek royalty.
Well, she has a queen.
Alice Krieg or Kriega, yeah, and she's literally the Borg Queen. She's the first one in my heart. I love them all, but she's my first.
Oh yeah, she's great. She just has like such menace in her voice, and I don't know, like she sounded older, or maybe just like they recorded it off of the phone or something. But I thought that actually worked. That it had kind of like this a little bit more like a distorted effect, or like maybe like a little aged or something. I think it actually worked for how weird the Borg Queen is supposed to be, especially in animation where it's hard to convey the optical weirdness that the wonderful Michael Westmore makeup did in Star Trek First Contact. But yeah, I think Susanna Thompson was probably a good Borg Queen. I think she's a lovely woman. I had a very strong awakening as a child when I saw her make out with Dax on Deep Space Nine.
That's right.
And she was a good Borg Queen too. Wow. But I think that Alice Krieg just has that secret sauce to the Borg Queen, that just like that weird I don't know, like danger. Like it just makes me have like flashbacks to being in the theater in 1996 and just being so weirded out at Data being so worried about like him being tortured, and he's kind of like, Data's kind of into it, kind of like, oh, like the sexy machine lady, but she's kind of also like freakishly unsexy and robotic and alien and strange, and just like, what the hell's going on? So I think that was a really cool catch for Lower Decks to bring back that legacy character with that legacy actor attached.
I had an awakening when I saw her for the first time as the Borg Queen as well.
I must
only lasted 0.0457 seconds.
I must confess, I was I was sitting there watching in the original First Contact saying, what bullshit is this? Borg aren't sexy. You're doing it wrong. But this is cranky fan hater
I get
at that point in my life.
I get that. I just love the weirdness. That's what this like collective of like alien species assimilated that like it would want to have like that part of its personality would want to like manifest like that. I just love how weird of an idea that is.
I like how she didn't recognize that Boimler is human. Like she was just like
because his skin was too unhealthy.
Too unhealthy. He's just like, you need to drink more water.
Oh, and this is where they actually get the name of the episode. So I did a good job avoiding spoilers. I accidentally saw like the picture of Mariner in the cowboy hat a couple days ago, but other than that, I didn't know anything about the episode. I didn't know the name of it until I saw the name actually on screen when it said "I Excretus," and I did kind of think about like, I wonder what that's supposed to mean, and I forgot about it. And then here, when Boimler's like, "There is no Boimler. I am Excretus of Borg." Obviously, like Locutus.
Yeah. I did wonder. Everyone else's test very clearly, once you get past a certain point of screwing up, it just says failed and it's over. And this Boimler went well into the past any sort of common sense failure point, and yet the thing kept running. And
he was only at 8% at the end of it, even after being assimilated. He was still at 8%.
I have a theory on that, which is, it was so compelling that the computer itself didn't want to turn it off. Like, it was just like, the computer was like, I have to see how this ends. Like,
maybe he was so capable and badass that runabout that we saw rescue him in one of the simulation attempts. Maybe like before he was assimilated, he had still like sent a message to them, and there's like a chance they might show up and unassimilate him. So it had to go as long as like that chance existed. Yeah. I don't know. I'm really reaching for that. But.
Yeah, I think I would have preferred a quick moment where he does a bit of Kirk Fu verbal trickery to get the computer to keep running. Like he's about to get assimilated, and then he calls Mariner and says, "Can I stop this now?" And they're like, "No, you got to keep it going." He's like, "All right, computer command override. Something, continue program," so that that's why it doesn't stop, is he overrides, he disables the safety.
But I love the visual. I love the visual of Borg Boimler, and just the idea that we kind of forget about it. It's all off screen, and then when we cut back to it, it's I am Excretus of Borg. I don't know. It's too funny to pass up on.
Oh no, I totally think they should have gone there. I just felt like a slight bit of line or two explaining why it didn't, why the test didn't abort and just say game over on him would have been nice, I guess.
I'm gonna go with with Father's theory. I like that he set something in motion that the computer couldn't end for whatever
there
reason.
Was still a chance he could win, therefore the computer wouldn't end it until I suppose that it makes some sort of sense. It makes as much sense as my idea that he would have the codes necessary to override the system.
I mean, he's a very good holodecker, Boims. Like he is very adept at holodecking.
Yeah, he likes to use the holodeck. We saw that in season 1. We end on that scene with the captain and the rest of the senior officers giving the new replicator to the lower deckers, I guess to thank them for having to put up with shittier conditions and hard work. And Tindy is all excited. We get pesto. Reaction from her.
So hard over that.
And they also established that Sherry Yin Yam quit, and we get that line of dialogue. It feels good to ruin a jerk's, or it feels good ruining a jerk's career. Yeah. So I'm glad to know that no one else in Starfleet will have to deal with her shenanigans. But yeah, what do y'all think of this replicator gift ending?
I still don't see why the replicator programs would be different for lower deckers than upper deckers. It's the same computer that it's pulling information from. You would really have to go out of your way to change things so that it would be different for people. I have a
weird theory about it.
Okay, let's hear it
All
because
right,
I
so
can't.
there's also the same kind of like segregation of food rations in Picard later. So like I think the more under strain the Federation gets, like the more they start like giving like kind of separating like what kind of food like the majority get versus maybe officers. I don't know, something like that. It makes
But
sense in a weird kind
It
of way.
doesn't
It's
though.
like it
It
does.
didn't make sense on Picard really either, unless you take the explanation that Shaka said they came up with Hanel Culpepper directed that, I
Yeah,
guess. But
yeah.
the idea that they came up with was that they had just recently expanded the Mars setup to increase the work they were doing for the ships for the Romulan rescue, and they just installed like the cheap simple replicators, and the good ones hadn't been set up yet.
yeah,
But that doesn't work. That works for Picard. That doesn't work for here on the Cerritos. When they said like you can get more than one slice of pizza at a time, I thought like,
Right.
oh well, maybe this replicator is larger, and
Right.
therefore it's able to make like a little bit more complicated
yeah.
of patterns, I guess. But then they say like, no, it's like the senior officer codes. The coding is different.
Codes.
It's just like it's the
Okay.
software, not the hardware. So I'm
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, that doesn't really make sense. Why would the software be different?
Yeah, why would you literally had somebody go and spend a bunch of time and effort creating separate software for the lower deckers when you could have used the same software and got on with your day.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was weird. Well, I did want to say with the whole black hole sequence earlier, I love the instructor hiding her head behind her body. That when
funny.
everything's going crazy, the instructor's head detaches and hides behind her body, peeking out over her neck. And I was like, "That's amazing!"
An old Pendronian
Thing, yeah.
technique,
I
I'm
like
sure.
And then of course we have the best Easter eggs out of all are motion picture Easter eggs. Of course, I adored the fact that we've got a reference to my second favorite Star Trek film. So
the character Bem, he's what's known as like Spock calls him like a colony.
It's a colony creature.
Creature, yeah, and so that's interesting. He has to like he decides his punishment is to like discorporate.
He wanted
like,
to self-destruct.
Yeah, he wanted to self-destruct.
And I wanted him to also.
Yeah.
I was like, do it.
So I thought
Do
of
it.
that, like she's like kind of losing herself and falling apart, and it's like it reminded me of that too. I thought I like these little callbacks to that episode.
That would have been a dark ending, but they could have had her when her plan fails at the end. They could have had her decide to just
Disintegrate. Yeah,
separate.
true.
Yeah. That would have been too dark if their actions are responsible for her suicide. Though
It would have been.
so
the
I'm glad
icing
they
on-
avoided that.
It was like it would have been a weird turn on this cake. It would have been a weird icing.
They do try to avoid killing
as a
people.
joke. Yeah,
yeah,
The
they
only
do have.
There's
the
a
only
limit.
time we saw death used as a joke in Lower Decks was in Magato Gamato with the Tellarite, and I'm okay with it there because they showed that dude was an idiot. He was there with the Mugatos through his own actions. The crew had nothing to do with it, and he got himself killed. They had zero responsibility or influence on like causing that death. They just happened to be there and at the right time to witness it. So that works, but yeah, here if it was something like they did, like I wouldn't have wanted it, even though I kind of hate Pendronians.
I did like the last scene where they seem to deliberately homage or riff on the old TOS thing of ending on a joke that is perhaps not nearly as funny as everyone thinks it is. Like, oh, we have to end on a joke. This is a bad joke. I don't care. It has to be the ending. And then they have Boimler slip in that little line about they took everything I was.
Which is also though. It's so sad too because it probably felt that way for him.
Yeah, if he actually went through anywhere near that level of trauma, then that makes me want to take off some points from this episode because that's pretty extreme. And I don't know if the joke is worth it. Like I said at the top of the podcast, to me it does kind of slightly diminish Boimler's big victory, but I think it doesn't completely tarnish it. I still buy the big badass moments. The fact that we did get to see him do that 100% score, that he did achieve it. Like, we know he did it. He knows he did it. That's good enough for
Yeah.
me.
It's cute
Yeah.
when, like, at the end, he's, like, asking about the score, and Tendy's like, no, you got it, 100,
Yeah.
she's like, 100.
Oh yeah,
It's
then he's just like, hit me again.
Yeah. I
Any
I kind of wish they had stressed the point that he could have quit the test anytime he wanted, but he's taking one for the team and putting up with all of this. Tied it more directly. The way it's on screen, it kind of feels like the program just gets away from him and starts grinding him up, and he has no choice on the matter. And I think it would have been more cool if he was consensually saying, no, I'm not going to say end program. I'm not going to say end program. I'm not going to say end. That hurts.
Right,
So,
right as they're shoving the implants into his ear.
Into his ear.
Like a steady ill. Any additional thoughts on this episode before we move on to the Gorn eggs?
I do say every week that this is my favorite episode, but not only is this my favorite episode, honestly, this is my favorite episode of both seasons. I love this episode. Like it's like one of the best episodes of Lower Decks, but you kind of have to go through a lot to get to this episode. I feel like it's a reward episode, if you will.
Yeah, it stands on the shoulders of things they've built in earlier episodes.
Yeah.
yeah. In other shows included. But
Yes. Oh yeah, in other shows. Good Lord, does it? I'm liking Lower Decks so much that it's at the risk of possibly usurping Star Trek: The Next Generation and becoming my fourth favorite Star Trek show.
Wow.
But I don't know if I can do that when so much of Lower Decks is built on top of The Next Generation, among other shows.
Yeah, you got to give props. That's true.
Yeah, I don't know. It's very, and I think that's fine. I think there's nothing wrong with it doing that, but it certainly depends on that 55-year history and foundation.
There's just I think there's just something also that the creators of the show should be immensely proud, because no matter like what side of decency you're on, like they're doing things that are like outrageous and crazy and that have never been done on Star Trek, but in a Star Trek way. Like this is like the most Star Trek kind of way. I don't know how else to describe it that you can do this.
How about we describe it as this show does boldly go?
It does boldly go.
It does boldly go. I will 100% for that.
It 100% boldly goes. It's awesome.
I think for my final thought, I will say I am very impressed that they did an entire story about Starfleet tests that involve no-win scenarios. And there is, as far as I could tell, only one very minor blink and you'll miss it Kobayashi Maru gag in this entire episode, whereas you'd kind of think that would be at least one big in your face Kobayashi Maru joke somewhere, but I didn't notice it if there was. So.
A true Easter egg is hard to find.
Almost like the Easter egg is that there's not the obvious joke. The obvious joke is not there.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Easter eggs, let's go ahead and talk about our Easter eggs, in jokes, and continuity connections in a section of the show we like to call the Gorn eggs. These are all the ones that I found that I thought were worthy of remark.
Did this break any records? Is the most references or Easter eggs in an episode, or no?
Oh no.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that would still have to be
the
Keishon His
one.
Eyes Open.
Yeah, Keishon is okay, cool.
But I'm gonna try to run through these very quick. So here I go. We get that distress call to the Bakersfield, a ship stuck in a causality loop. That's probably a reference to the time loop in the episode of Next Generation, Cause and Effect. Also, Bakersfield, we can assume, is a California-class ship named after Bakersfield, California. And the relay station that they go to looks a lot like Relay Station 47, my favorite relay station we saw in the Next Generation episode Aquiel. Also, the Bakersfield is stuck in a causality loop, so that's probably a callback to the time loop in Cause and Effect. That's probably the most famous time loop in Star Trek, the Next Generation episode Cause and Effect. The lower deckers are beamed back from the relay station. They're given like these shiny metallic blankets, which are a thing in Star Trek. There's like shiny blankets in sickbay. I've never seen this exact pattern, even though it looks super specific. I couldn't find it anywhere in anything I looked at. But if anyone has spotted this pattern in anything in Star Trek, please let me know because I can't find it. It did look really specific though, and like I said, there are those shiny blankets. Our character Sherry Yin Yam is a Pendronian, like we've been talking about all along. Our old friend Ari Ben Belm, who was in the not Next Generation, in the animated series episode Belm, written by David Gerald, creator of Tribbles. He also created Belm. Interestingly enough, he originally envisioned this as a live-action episode. It would have been an original series episode with a little person standing on the back of a larger person, and that's how they would split apart. But yeah, that was so weird to me seeing that character split apart in the animated series. He could do more than 3 parts. Like he could send like his arms flying off, and it sounded like he was made up of like many smaller creatures.
Yeah.
The names of the drills, there's a bunch of callbacks to movies, episodes. There is a like Brian said, blink and you miss it, Kobayashi Maru drill that's listed on the board. We also have Time Trap. That's an animated series episode. Tribble Troubles, obviously Tribble Tribbles from Q to Q. Sounds like it would have been a Q episode. We saw the Borg encounter, cause and effect.
Chain of command.
I'm not going to do the cause and effect thing again. Natural selection, evolution, survival of the fittest, chain of command, hero worship, carbon-based units. That's got to be the motion picture. Naked Time, of course. Well Rescue's got to be Star Trek 4. Tribble Infestation, Extreme Engineering, Teleportation, Death Tag, Medical Ethics. There's a callback. That was the Tindy one, callback to the Next Generation episode Ethics. There was Escape the Void. It might have been like the Void from Bingston Jr. is doing that one. The Good of the Mini was the Rutherford one. Tribble Troubles, Naked Time. Also, there was one called Time Loop. That was probably in reference to the Next Generation episode Cause and Effect. It's like I think like the most famous time loop in all of Star Trek.
We get more crew member names too, which is awesome.
Yeah, we got to see like the last name for Jennifer is actually Sharian or Sharian.
Sharian.
The character that we see with the turban, the Sheik, his last name is Arjun. I don't know if we knew that before. But yeah, so that was cool to establish some of that. Also, the escape from Space Dock, obviously, like we mentioned before, my favorite Star Trek movie is Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock.
The poster's awesome. The poster art.
The officer who says, move it along, lower decks, to the senior officers when they're told that they're going to have the lower deck assignments, that also voiced by Phil LaMarr, but that same character said, move it along, lower decks, to Tindy when she first arrived on the USS Cerritos in the first episode of the show.
That's right.
And then in the drills that our principal characters do, we see a bunch of homage stuff. In the Mirror Universe, we have the things we talked about before, but, clearly inspired by the original series style uniforms, except the department colors are switched. So, Mariner being in command, she still has red like Uhura, and even has the little gold armband thing that Uhura had. The Mirror Universe logo, as I think Geek Filter pointed out earlier, that is that Terran Empire emblem. That is what has been used in the IDW comics recently, and their explanation is that the Terran Empire still exists during the time of Deep Space Nine and those later Mirror Universe shows. It's just that it's so small, it's kind of just around like the Sol system and a few other star systems, and that the Terran slaves that are off on Terok Nor, they're told that, oh yeah, the entire Terran Empire has been burnt to the ground, it doesn't exist. Kind of like how like the Japanese would tell American POWs in World War II, like, oh yeah, we've already like conquered America, like all your cities are destroyed and stuff, kind of like that psychological warfare thing. I actually talked to the artist J.K. Woodward about this, and he said like that was like their idea there. And so this version of the Terran Empire Starfleet does fit into the stuff that they were doing in that comic book continuity. So it might be the same type of thinking went into this. They obviously someone read those comics if they got the emblem from it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and I just wanted to throw in there that Mariner does a double fist punch because that's my favorite Star Trek fight move ever.
Your favorite Kirk Fu?
Did y'all catch that shriek from Invasion of the Body Snatchers that
No,
Boimler does?
I saw it and then I realized it, but I didn't catch it on first watch.
Yeah, it would have been pretty weird if that was real, but I can buy it in the holopod simulation. And then, of course, the Agonizer is a very accurate representation of the original series
Yeah.
Agonizer, so happy to see that. I mentioned the Klingon medical scenario. That was all based on the Next Generation episode Ethics, where Worf broke his back and had a ceremonial dagger that would have been used in a ritual suicide. That was the Hegbat ritual suicide, not to be confused with the Mok Tavor ritual suicide that we later
there's
see in
different
the DS9 episode Sons of Moog. So yeah, Klingons have different ritual suicides and different ceremonial blades that they use for their different
each
ritual
one.
suicides.
That's
Yeah, so
fascinating.
Mariner's Old West planet was based on the original series episode Spectre of the Gun, where we see a very similar looking Old West planet. The Good of the Many, as we mentioned, was from the Wrath of Khan.
Yeah.
And the Borg encounter was full of familiar Borg stuff. We have that whole "We are the Borg," you will be assimilated, all of that stuff. We have the drawer full of babies. Boimler having to take the babies with him. That's even kind of an acknowledgement of what happens in Star Trek Voyager. And there's the escape sphere, like the one that we saw in Star Trek First Contact, even though I think the one Boimler used was much, much smaller. And of course, the inclusion of the Queen and her having Boimler strapped on that table and blowing on him like she did with poor Data in
With Data.
Star Trek First Contact. And then, of course, Naked Time references the original series episode Naked Time. We have the same graffiti, love mankind,
That's
and
right.
sinner repent on the walls. Also, if you didn't notice it, Steve Stevens is riding Ransom like a horse, saying, like, I don't know where my body ends and yours begins, or something like that. But if you look into his hand and see what he's actually spanking Ransom
It's
with,
an organ.
it's a Horgon. First seen in the episode Captain's Holiday. We mentioned that the commander in the Klingon encounter scenario was wearing the Robin Hood hat, so that ties into the episode Cupid, where Q is also doing weird stuff and making people dress up as Robin Hood. And the crystalline entity, that was something that I guess they first mentioned in the episode Data Lore of Next Generation, but we don't see it until Silicon Avatar, right? Is the name of it, season 5?
No, what? No, isn't it? It's at the end of Data Lore.
Oh yeah, it is in the end of Data Lore,
yeah,
isn't it?
yeah.
Yeah. And then it dies in
In the other one.
Silicon
yeah.
Avatar.
Yeah.
Oh, Ransom
cool,
is
right.
told by Captain Mariner. He's called Yeoman Ransom, and he's told like go get some coffee. In the original series, we saw Yeoman Rand and other yeomans serving coffee to Captain Kirk. And it doesn't age particularly well. And then,
I
of course,
would love to be a coffee serving yeoman. Just FYI.
well,
Starfleet
if I get a
vessel.
command of my own ship, I'll keep that in mind.
I'd love it.
Oh,
that would be the perfect job for me.
The last thing I caught was that final joke at the end when the Cerritos goes into warp, when Boimler says they took everything that I was. As we mentioned, that was from the episode Family, where Picard does his big breakdown. And then, sorry, I got a little out of order here. Oh, and the motion picture wormhole effect is replicated on the USS Cerritos. It's hard to think about this scene and not be like, no, belay that phaser order.
Very good.
I was kind of disappointed they didn't do the voice thing. So.
Father, there was one plot point that I forgot to mention that we've been kind of seeing Mariner like openly like saying how she's unsure of Boimler's abilities when he's being awesome, and she does it again in this episode where she said like Captain Freeman's like, don't worry, I've got my best guy on this or something like that, and she's like, really? Mariner's like, really? You think he's your best? You think he's the best guy? Like kind of in this weird jealous way, and it's like interesting that she keeps doing.
I was surprised. I was surprised that Captain Freeman said that. To be honest, so.
But still, he's been very capable this whole season. Like he's been doing a lot of great. Like he's been a lot more capable than he was last season. He's getting noticed too for it, which is nice. And I think I don't know, I think she's kind of undermining him unintentionally, and it's just showing. She keeps doing it throughout the season, like, so
Well, she intentionally undermined him last
right,
week.
right,
so.
right. But she's doing it under this like guise of helping, and I don't think it's helping. So I wonder if it's gonna come to a head. I don't know. I'm just saying.
I think there's a few different emotions at play there, but I'm sure it'll come up in a future episode and we can discuss it then. I do want to bring up our subspace transmissions. We asked people last week what they thought of last week's episode. Anyone remember the name of it?
The name of last week's? It was the weird Shakespeare, kinky Shakespeare
where
line.
Where pleasant fountains lie.
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
Just took me a moment.
So we got some responses. I don't have time for too many, but I'll just go through these real quick on Twitter. Fruity_Spock, or Spock
Awesome,
is gay.
awesome
How do you
name.
introduce people on Twitter? Do you go by the @ thing, or do you go by like the description above that?
The ad's proper, and then the description is just like how they want to be like known at the moment.
Well, this person here, should I call them Spock is gay, or should I call them Fruity Spock? That's really a distinction without a difference. Now that I say it out loud,
yeah, exactly.
we'll just go with Fruity Spock.
_Spock.
Call them
yeah.
Deep Space Nine Season 4. That's the clearest.
You have to, if you're gonna read the
Or
description, you have
Carlos.
to do the whole. It's Spock is
Okay.
gay. Parentheses,
Hold up.
Deep Space Nine Season 4, and then chocolate bar, LLAP, avocado, spaceship Carlos. I don't know what that.
I would call that a rocket ship, not a
yeah,
spaceship.
rocket ship. Sorry.
But again, splitting hairs. That was a bunch of hairs split. But this person on Twitter says, it was so cool, and my favorite part was by lips. Yeah, we get like by Billups last week. So a lot of people really liked seeing that.
Right. That was very cool.
I don't know if he was bi or ace or both, but
you can be both. So that's
if you see yourself being seen in Star Trek, then I stand by your right to see that, and I'm glad that you're enjoying it. Also, a longtime Tex-Trek audience member, Alexandra Sandu, said, we were talking about the Danube River last year when we saw the runabout. Where is that? And she says, oh no, I fell asleep instead of being there, representing for the Danube. Laughing out loud. It may start in Germany, but it very significantly ends in Romania / Danube Delta / the Black Sea. And I believe Alexandra lives in Romania. So she lays claim to the Danube River. Starfleet boy, do not try to give it to Germany.
Just FYI, I think it's Danube, by the way. But
Danube.
I like Danube. Danube sounds more like
Danube.
Yeah, I like the way Danube sounds, so it's cool.
And also on YouTube last week, opinions no one cares about said. Anyone else want to see an episode from the new season of Picard that features an appearance from a live-action Captain Boimler? It's about 20 years later. That's more than enough time to get his own ship. Heck, he could be an admiral. I'm going to answer that first, then I'll ask what y'all think. But I don't want to see that next season because that will already give away like his story arc for Lower Decks. And I want Mike McMahon to get to tell that story the way he wants to tell. But I would like someday in the future, years from now, I'd like to see like a live action Captain Boimler. Why not? That'd be great. What about y'all?
Yeah, that sounds fun. Should he be an admiral or a badmiral?
No, I think he's good. I would be sad if we see Boimler go through all this and then he turns out to be a jerk.
Yeah, I don't think that's gonna happen. But I do think, I would like to see all of these guys somehow make it into live action. I'm not sure how that could happen, but I think Captain Boimler is in his future. I mean, like, he's very gung ho on it. He's like very committed to it. Like, there's no doubt in my mind he's gonna be captain. But I also would like to see, if she wants it, like, Mariner find what she's into. Like, she's clearly not into like the Starfleet thing, but she uses Starfleet because she's familiar with it and she grew up with it. So it'll be interesting to see where Mariner goes.
Boimler will be captain, and
Mariner will
be ensign on that ship.
Yeah, she's like Harry
amazing.
Kim, but on
Oh my
purpose, like
gosh.
intentionally, like
Yes.
that's
Oh
her
my gosh.
choice.
That's a great ending. We're going way too far ahead, but yeah, that's actually
they need to
quite poetic.
bring Harry Kim into this show somehow and comment on.
Well,
his
we're supposed to get
ensignness.
Sonia Gomez at some point, but they apparently it's probably okay to talk about this. But the actress who plays her also played a very memorable character in Total Recall.
Right.
who had 3 boobs. But she said that she was going to show up in Lower Decks, and apparently, like, people were mad at her because she wasn't supposed to talk about that.
Oh, okay.
So maybe they cut her from the show. I don't know. We only got 2 more episodes, so I guess we'll find out in 2 weeks if she survived the final cut of season 2 or not.
The other thing that excites me about the season is I truly have no idea what the ending of the season's going to be about. Like, are they going to, like, how are they, is it going to be another crazy ending like last season, or are they going to do something
It's going to
completely
be,
different?
they're setting up for something big, I think.
Yeah.
And next week might tease it, kind of like last week. I'm sorry, not last year. The penultimate episode, Crisis Point, was not only really big in and of itself, but it ended with a little bit of a cliffhanger with Boimler learning the secret of Mariner and Freeman's relation.
That's right.
So I wouldn't be surprised if there's some type of like big hook at the end of next week's episode. Maybe like they'll go back to like the Pakled ringleader. Maybe something with like the Boimler transporter clone will come into play. I'm gonna be disappointed if like this cool badass Boimler we've gotten, if it turns out like he's the copy and not the real Boimler, and like we lose him or something. Like
There's
please do not do that. So if we get through the season without that happening, I will be jumping with joy.
I think this is our Bradward Boimler.
Yeah. I predict that there will be some sort of showdown or competition between the 2 Boimlers at the end of the season. So,
well, 2 Boimlers enter, 1 Boimler wins.
2 Boimlers and a microphone.
That's going to be it. We're way over time, so we're going to have to shut down the show. But thank you everyone for joining us live. And if you are watching us live, you should hop on over to the Starfleet Boy After Dark channel in about 30 minutes.
Yeah, about 30 minutes. We'll try to start close to 11, a little earlier.
So 11 Eastern.
Yes, sir.
And what's going to be on the menu for
well,
discussion?
I think it's going to be a little bit all over the place, but as usual, we're going to talk about science fiction. So we'll probably go a little further into this episode, specific scenes maybe of Lower Decks. We're definitely going to talk about Foundation first before Father gets there, because he hasn't seen it and he's interested in it. Brian, are you watching Foundation?
I do not have the Apple TV, but it is a show I am very interested in.
You can come watch it with me. It looks really good. It looks super good in 4K HDR. It's one of the best looking shows I've ever seen.
Maybe we should arrange a get together and binge episodes together.
Yeah. So. Anyways, so yeah, we're gonna talk about that. What is it called? The Many Saints of Newark. Braxton's gonna come on and talk about Venom 2. And then we'll be talking about like whatever else anyone wants to talk about.
Cool. So hop on over there if you want to check that stuff out. And we will, of course, be back next week, 7:30 p.m. Central on Friday to discuss next week's episode of Star Trek Lower Decks. We'll also be covering Lower Decks finale the week after that. And then we're going to have a special guest. I don't know if he's still hanging out in the chat, but hopefully we'll be able to get Aaron Harvey, aka Geek Filter, back on the show. And then after that, we'll be going into Prodigy and Discovery. So lots to check out. And you can catch us on YouTube, or you can listen to the podcast late Sunday nights or early Monday morning. Those are available following each live show we do on Fridays. And until next time, as always, live long and prosper, y'all.
Listen to the Tex-Trek podcast through Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or at tex-trek.com. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/tex-trek, and follow Fathery on Twitter at TXTrek. Please support us by liking our videos and subscribing to our channel on YouTube. Thank you and take care.